It's Chris, host of The Heart of the Story. Welcome to the show. We have another amazing guest in the building. Friend of mine, Shawn Finnegan. How's it going, Shawn?
It's going great, Chris. Thank you, man. It's an honor to be here.
Dude, it's been too long since you and me have been face to face.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Last time I saw you was at Jack's. Remember that big indoor arcade place?
Oh, Jake's.
Jake's, that's what it is. Yeah.
Jake's. That's right. That was, almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, they had. 2
years ago.
I was with my daughter and we made that. Remember the
volcano taco? Ice cream taco?
Yeah.
The unicorn taco.
Unicorn taco. That's what it was.
Yes.
So it's basically, it was cotton candy was the shell, and then you fill it with this crazy ice cream, and then you dump a bunch of candy on top, and then like fudge sauce on top.
It's still to this day.
It was like the craziest thing ever.
It's the most wild thing in the world.
So good for you.
All their desserts, they're like, I don't know, portion size of like 6 or 7 people.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah, right.
And like you're going to need to go to a doctor right after.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, that's amazing. Dude, so on this show, we always start with people with their early days. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've seen any of our episodes. But
yeah, I sure have.
We start off people with the early days, and then we just let the conversation flow from there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Let's go back to the early days. You were just telling me a little bit ago about your BYU upbringing.
Oh, yeah.
So where were you born and raised?
Orem, Utah. Right in the valley, right in the heart of the valley.
What part of Orem? North, south, central?
Over by Mountain View is where I went to school.
Over by Mountain View. So
yeah, so right off of Center, not too far from Center Street, yeah.
Yeah, near the vineyard now.
Yeah.
Oh, Mountain View. What's that like?
It was crazy, man. It's good time. It was good community, raised by a dad who was a hard-working bookstore manager. And then, so my mom was like my original inspiration because she was the side hustle mom, right? Because we had 5 children, trying to raise 5 children on a salary of a bookstore manager. It's difficult. So I learned early on the side hustle, right? So we had like preschool, we had multiple different little side hustles. We were the marketing arm of the kids, walking around with flyers, that kind of stuff. And I learned a lot of that hustle from my mom.
What are some of the side hustles that she did that were like most successful?
We would literally buy candy at a certain price, and then we'd go door. I got so good at selling door to door that I could stop giving a presentation. All I had to do is walk up and show them a product, and they would know that I was selling something. Because if I wanted
all
to
your neighbors,
everyone. Like for miles around, I would go knock doors. And it's hard to say no when you got a kid who's like 13 standing there with 2 pencils standing on your doorstep, right? And so I always tell people now, it's like if you're a young child, you're a young teenager, go sell stuff. It's like I got so many yeses. It was amazing. And if I wanted like to make some kind of an allowance, I wasn't going to go to my dad and say, "Hey, can I have an allowance?" So you have to go out and earn that stuff, right? And it's the best thing. It teaches you so many great lessons. Go knock a bunch of doors.
How old are you?
I did that for like years. Like 5-6 years I did that.
How old were you when you started?
Maybe like 8 or 9 when I first started.
Damn,
I was like, like my neighbors, like they should buy my stuff. So I sold candy, I sold pencils, I sold everything I could get my hands on. If I got a good price on it, I'd go and sell it door to door.
All around the Orem community?
Everywhere, yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Is this how you like?
I never got rejected either because it's hard to reject a 13-year-old standing there.
Yeah.
Trying to just make an extra buck, right?
Was this money that went towards you just having spending money?
Or was that was how I made spending money. Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
for you.
Generally, that was my spending money. Yeah.
You're spending money. So it wasn't going towards like the family.
Right. Yeah.
Legit. And then, did you do sports growing up? I mean, I know that
I was a golfer.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I wasn't even good back then. Yeah. It's a different, when you play golf, it's different when you actually golf in a tournament, right?
Uh-huh.
It's a different animal. It's not like a fun thing being out with your buddies playing golf. I mean, it's serious stuff. And I wasn't great then, and I'm still not great.
What do you shoot usually?
I'm a bogey, straight up good bogey. I've actually golfed a lot in the last 6 months, just getting invited to things, and you gain a love for it because there's a certain serenity that you can experience on a course.
Oh, 100%. It's ultimately grounding.
Yeah.
The game of golf is all about you being in line with Earth in the moment and pure presence.
And talk about building relationships in business. There's not a better place than sitting in a golf cart. Your phone's not distracting you.
100%.
You got mano a mano with the person you're with the group of people. It's a great way to build a business, build rapport.
What was your go-to golf course back in the day in Orem?
It was Cascade.
Okay.
And East Bay, if you know that one.
I know East Bay, yeah.
Yeah. East Bay had truckloads of water.
Yes.
So we would dive out there at night and get our golf balls that we probably donated to the ponds.
That's hysterical. Mm-hmm. So where'd you end up going to college?
So I went to Utah State. Out of college, I worked for an agent company called AOL, Time Warner. Back in there, I ran a customer service center. So I moved to Tucson, Arizona, and I started up a center here. Hired
right out of high school.
Right out of college. So out of college, I took a job and moved down here to Tucson.
And you went down here.
And my job was to hire, and we hired 1,000 people in 6 months.
For AOL.
So I had a booth I set up in the mall, and then I would chase people down and try to hire them. And I hired 1,000 people here in 6 months.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, crazy.
What would you get your degree in?
I was in marketing. I'm in marketing sales.
Marketing sales, very applicable.
Yeah,
probably the number one skill that kids need to learn. Mm-hmm. It's how to market and sell.
Yes.
What'd you do after AOL?
So I decided to move back to Utah. I worked for an asset protection attorney, and then ultimately I decided to start my first business in 2009. So if we know 2009. If you've been around for some time, you know that was a very hard year. I wish someone would have gotten a time machine and gone back and said, "Hey, don't start a business in 2009," because it was a very tough time. The water cooler talk, tons of foreclosures, tons of problems, and I decided I'm going to launch into my business. And at the time, I'm not working. And so I would go to a hoagie yogi place, a sandwich shop, and sit in a booth. And with 3 other people, I had this spreadsheet that I was building, and the business was going to be created from this spreadsheet. And we would go into that hoagie yogi every single day and sit down and plan our business out. And I came up with this plan, which was doing live events. So go get it, big brands, big authors, put them on stages, sell tickets, that kind of stuff. And I had all my projections done. And according to my spreadsheet, I'd become a millionaire, right? Mm-hmm. So at the time, I was a spreadsheet millionaire. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I had a plan. I had excitement, energy. I was a young entrepreneur. And I decided to raise funds at that point.
This was right after you were just doing asset protection.
Yes.
You were unemployed.
Unemployed, yes.
Did you get, what is it, like layoffs? Did you get caught in layoffs?
It was a layoff, at the time.
Yeah. Living back in Utah County?
Utah County, yep. So
back to Utah County, and then you were like, hey, I'm going to get into the big event space. Mm-hmm. Two other partners.
Yep. So now I'm going to go raise funds. I've never raised funds before. I'm pre-revenue. I haven't created $1 yet. And so you imagine going into someone and saying, hey, here, I haven't created any money. I have this plan. Give me $250,000, right? And so I met with 60 investors, and I got 23 of them to give me $1.5 million.
Each?
No, that's total.
Oh, total.
Some were like $50,000.
You raised 1.5 over 23.
Mm-hmm. 23 investors said yes.
Huh. What was the structure like? Like, did you use like a convertible note, or what was this?
No, literally, they were just buying a piece of my entity.
Wow, you carved up your ownership to a lot of people.
A lot of people. It was a learning experience, because I also got over half that said no. Yeah. And so then I would go figure out what I was saying wrong, go redevelop the pitch, go back, and I raised 1.5. So, like, if you were going back in the time machine to that, Shawn Finnegan that day, I remember going on LinkedIn and putting that I was a CEO. Uh-huh. So now so I came from a dad who was a bookstore manager. So I didn't come from money, and I raised $1.5 million in my operating account. I could show you. And then I was CEO on LinkedIn. And I felt like I was in that moment the king of the world, right?
You're feeling yourself.
Yeah. So I'm business partners with Kevin O'Leary right now, the Shark Tank. And one of his quotes is, in business, poo-poo happens, right? And for me, poo-poo happened. Over the next 12 months, I made every mistake you can possibly make in business. If you made a mistake in business, I probably made something similar in operations, sales, marketing. Like I did, one of my first events was I did David Bach, the Automatic Millionaire, and big author. I paid him $70,000. I did direct mail to fill the room.
Okay.
Direct mail hit a week after the event. Which is in the definition of a very bad thing, right? Because I have this, imagine being the promoter. There's 500 chairs in there.
How'd you get him?
You have to go through agents, right? So you call up an agent, convince them, hey, I've got this vision. And they're like, hey, I have a vision, much bigger vision. This could fit into my world. So I want to be part of this stage. Plus you pay him $70,000.
Yeah, so is that where you used the money? Was that the use of funds?
That was part of it, yep.
Paying yourself, paying team? Or what did you use?
Not paying myself, yeah. It was just figuring out the model. So $70,000 of it would have went to him. 500 chairs, 30 people are in the room, and he's pulling up in the limo. And you feel like digging a hole and jumping in and hiding, right? It is a miserable, miserable thing. I lost tens of thousands of dollars in one event. But over that 12 months, I lost $1.5 million, but worse. It was like I had $2,500 in the bank, and I had hawked my house and my car. So it was worse than that because I had lost my personal savings, my house, my car were all up on the chopping block at the end of a year. And
were you married at the time?
And I still remember. Well, I remember my wife was like, "Hey, you know Bob down the street? He's got a job, and he has benefits, and he gets paid a salary. Have you ever considered? It's like, have you ever considered that?
She's going
because
down
it's
that
just
road,
like
yeah.
you talk about the trauma of an entrepreneur, but you have someone back there in their family that is that much better." And is definitely in the foxhole with those entrepreneurs going through the pains.
The spouse of the entrepreneur.
The
kids,
children of the entrepreneur, everyone going through this.
Of all the family members.
I was actually just with my daughter driving here, and I was like, do you remember when we lived in the Highland house? Do you remember your dad being stressed out of his mind at all? She's like, yeah, I remember some tough times, and it was those early years. It was our hardest time, right? Because house was up, car was on the block, and I was down to $2,500 in the bank on a Thursday night, and next day payroll was due, and it was $3,500. And I didn't have I had staff that I had to cover, right? And to me, I was like, I had all this pounds of per square inch pressure because what about all the employees I had there? They had faith and confidence in me. They joined the team.
Yeah.
And what about my friends and family that thought I was amazing because I was CEO on LinkedIn? And what about that embarrassment? And what about 23 people that gave me $1.5 million? What about that? And all this stuff just starts piling on, and it's a Thursday night, and the next day I can't even make payroll, and I don't have $1,000 in the world. That's how miserable. And I did not. There's a difference between problems and pain. Right. So my problem is I had a failing business, but the pain was like a totally different beast. Like it was a physical in fetal position pain for me. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. I remember just sitting in bed, just staring at the ceiling because the next day, what did it mean? I had to go in there and face the employees that I couldn't pay you. And I'd done the math. It's like I could pay you 90% and we'll make it up next week, we hope. Right. So I remember praying for a miracle. Morning comes, miracle doesn't happen. And I go into the office. I turn off the automatic deposits for everyone, and I go to lunch. And I'm sitting at lunch, and I'm with my business partner. We're like, have we overturned every rock? Is there anyone else we can call? And I get a phone call while I'm at lunch from my controller, and she's like, hey, Shawn, I was digging through the petty cash in the safe, and I found $3,000. Like, what do you want me to do with it? And I was like, well, I want you to hang on to that money. So I screeched my tires. I drove back. I picked up the $3,000, and I went straight over to the bank. And I remember walking into the teller and giving her $3,000 in cash. And it instantaneously deposits. As we know, cash is king from college days. Were you
officing
it? In Provo.
Provo?
Yeah. And so the teller cut me. We did physical checks, right? So, and I still remember the shading of the check, everything, the brown shading, and I remember the check. Literally, it's ingrained in my mind. And I took those checks back, and I went to each individual on my team, and I handed them those checks. And then we made payroll by $1,000 or whatever. And I decided, for me, is what's greater motivation? Is it pain and suffering, or is it success? And to me, it was the pain and suffering, because that afternoon I said, well, I'm going to do something totally different. And I was like, how do these empire builders build their business? I was Googling pictures of Steve Jobs and other ones, and I was like, every time I pulled up a picture, I found that they weren't by themselves generally. It was like Steve Jobs, but who was he next to? Wozniak. And Steve Jobs got his start in Atari because Atari had a problem with chips and they couldn't fit the chips in the machine. Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs took the job, would pick up the Atari parts, take them out of the back of the factory and hand them to Wozniak, and Wozniak developed a system that fixed their problem, right? It was all from a partnership, and I've figured out at that point there's no such thing as self-made anyone. Mm-hmm. And I realized I had to take the ownership on myself and say, hey, I failed myself. I need to go out and build relationships in business, because this is how people build empires.
What year was this?
So this would have been literally it was 2010.
So you started in 2009. Mm-hmm. This is just a year later.
A year later. And so I reached out that afternoon. And maybe my friends felt some desperation, but I reached out to two individuals that were the most I was like, who in my group? And this is the best place to start for building networks right here. You've already made the connection. Mm-hmm. People just need to use this, right? Mm-hmm. But I reached out to two of them, and I just said, I need help. And I just was authentic, and I went through all my problems. And they ended up partnering with me and bringing their resources to the table and their partnerships to the table.
They invest, or?
They invested. They came and literally bailed me out, but became my partners. And then we went on this crazy run in our business, and we were able to pay off. It took me another 12 months, but I was able to pay off the 1.5 plus interest to all of the investors. It was 2.1 total. Because after a year, when I had enough cash to pay them, I was like, hey, I was at death's door a year ago. I want to pay you out. And so they all made a nice return, because they knew I was at death's door a year earlier, and I got all the investors out. And then we went on this run, and I made more in the next few years than I ever could have dreamed in my life. Right?
You had to you had to sell your house and your car?
I hawked them. So they were on the chopping block, but I didn't have to sell. But I hit a point where I wasn't making payments, and had to make up payments. I mean, it was nasty.
It got nasty.
Nasty.
What was the relationship like with your wife during that stretch?
It was just, it is like, if we were to ask, if people were really authentic, and especially business owners, and it's hard. It's extremely hard. You come home, it's not like you can leave it at the door when you leave your business. You bring that stuff home, right? You're stressed out. You aren't eating, food doesn't taste good. Nothing is great. You're not in a great mood. You know what I mean?
I know.
It is so hard.
This is awesome. We're getting real and raw on the authenticity piece here, because I don't think you and I have really ever gone this level of depth. Yeah. I actually understand what you're saying so much right now. We're going through a divorce over this exact same situation. Yeah. The entrepreneurship game eats you up.
It does.
It literally eats you alive. Yeah. I've been there. I've had moments where it was got $1 million, and then the next moment you're $500,000 in debt. Yeah. And you're like, but I got to pay for things. Yeah. How do I go tell my wife there's no money? Oh, by the way, I owe money. Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
It's so hard.
How do you do that?
Tons of trauma involved.
Yeah. And it's the ultimate test of how strong are you? Mm-hmm. How strong are you? It's okay to admit that you're not that strong. Yeah. It's okay.
What I've found is just how you're being vulnerable. The more vulnerable I am and the more I tell people my problems, the deeper the connections I made. Mm-hmm. Right? Right. Some people try to like, especially to wealthy people, they're like, I'm crushing it. No one talks like that. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, and anyone who's really savvy doesn't talk like that.
No.
Like, and so they don't believe it. But if you go to someone who's wealthy and successful, say, hey, I got a couple things I want to get your perspective on. Like, I'm going through this and that, and you get really good stuff. And really great relationships because they know you're a real person. I hate the phrase fake it till you make it. I think that's the worst advice anyone can give. I hate that crap. Don't fake anything.
I believed in it and tried to live my life off that model for like 4 years.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years. And I had to completely scrap it. True fact, I actually only worked at Nuri because I had hit rock bottom with my own previous business.
Yeah.
I'd been running a business, thought I'd really made it, was crushing it in all, things on life on the surface level, but I had invested in stuff that was not going to cash flow, and I didn't understand what investing really was. What I didn't understand what it meant.
Right.
I wasn't born and raised with money. I was born and raised in Santa Monica, but in government housing.
Right. Sure.
I was the poorest kid in Santa Monica. I shouldn't have grown up in Santa Monica.
Yeah. When people hear Santa Monica, they're like, "Oh, you were a baller."
People hear that all the time. They're like, "Oh, you're born and raised in Santa Monica," and you're like, "Yes, I know ballers."
Right.
Yeah. I was not one.
Right.
Not one.
Yeah.
I was not one.
Right.
My dad was a banker who never made over 67,000 a year.
Yeah,
max.
same. Yeah.
And my mom was a special ed aide that made, I don't know, 25 grand a year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like collective family income, parent income never hit over 100,000 in Santa Monica.
Yeah. Which everything's so expensive to live. Yeah.
You just get eaten up alive out there. Right?
Yeah.
So, I didn't.
Those all things happen for you.
Yeah. You had to grit and grind. I always ask myself, why did I grow up here when I didn't fit in? And, I'm wearing clothes now that I'm like, I never could have afforded this when I was a kid.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't get my first cell phone until I was 14, and I didn't get a smartphone until I was 19 when I bought it with my own money.
Yeah.
When all the other kids were getting Range Rovers at 15 when they were getting their permits.
Yeah. But it probably taught you a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
That's how it was. Like I wouldn't change anything.
100%.
Yeah. Going back to those times, you're like really painful when your friends are doing stuff you can't do.
100%. But I look back at it now and I'm like, why did I grow up here? I'm like, God wanted me to grow up here because it taught me to learn language for money, learn, interact with people, network with people. I have a network that's stupid now.
Yeah, you do. You're way networked. Yeah.
And then I also had to go through what it meant to be in that position of being the poor kid in the... and it wasn't even just the poor kid, it was being the poor Mormon kid in Santa Monica.
Sure.
So I'm in the minority on everywhere you look. You know what I mean? I remember being 14 years old and getting called up in front of the class during Prop 8 and them asking, why do you hate gays?
That's hard, man.
Yeah. So take me through it. So where you're going through that business.
Yeah.
And events company, you come in, you were going through the struggles you were talking about. You get some partners.
Yep.
Those partners kind of help you out in a way. Where did the business go from there?
Went on this crazy run, and then if we were to, you start unpacking things, there's like about another 10 to 20 hard things that hit
during that,
right? Well, yeah, still, it's like,
how long did you run it?
I was so shocked, like seeing successful people that I thought, like my perception of successful people changed completely going through that.
Yeah,
like 15 years around that thing.
But 15 years.
You got everyone that I talked to afterwards, going through all the stuff. They're just like, oh yeah. I've got. I was like, wait a minute. It's like certain people you think of like, oh, that guy's crushed it his whole life, or that girl's amazing, and then you go talk to them and you're like telling it, like you find out, no, actually, all of them struggled. I think it's like there's two things I've seen that are in common.
Yeah.
That I've seen in studying any successful person. There's two things. I think there's two similarities in anyone you study, and the number one is they're persistent. Mm-hmm. They don't give up fast. They got a conviction that's powerful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And number two is they've all failed miserably and really bad failures. Elon Musk, 2008, mm-hmm. he's within months of losing both businesses, right?
He had to put everything he had into it.
And he can't decide which one is going to let live or which one's going to die. And if he puts all his money here, maybe one of them's got a shot. He can't choose, so he does half in Tesla, right? Mm-hmm. Half in SpaceX. Mm-hmm. And just prays for a miracle, and you know the end of the story. But that's 2008. He has a nervous breakdown that year, a divorce that year, and he's within months of not making payroll in those companies. And so as you unfold stuff and you start looking at real people and real entrepreneurs, they have failures.
Well, I think that goes for all things of life, I'd say, as well. As you ever look at the fact that, like, you know, historical figures, even on the religious standpoints, you know, like Joseph Smith, Job, they all, you can't name a prophet who hasn't been at the very lowest of low. Yeah. And there's that, like, old Joseph Smith quote where he's like, why does God, you know, let people go low so you can build them higher than ever before?
Yeah, I don't know why I got stuck on this, but I was biking the other day and I started listening to how bricks are made.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like how bricks are made.
Yeah.
And there's a sun, if you can sun bake bricks, just literally make your brick, put it in the sun. But if you put it to fire, it's 100 times more powerful than the sun baked, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's how life is, right? You have to go through that refiner's fire. You have to go through silver, anything. Yeah. Like, right? How you make a strong sword. You got to put it under tons of stress.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And it's how we are. And like we don't want to face it a lot of times, and it's hard. No one asks for it. No one wants it. But when you do, is how you're going to respond.
How are you going to respond? Yeah. So you're building that business. Mm-hmm. What did you do from that business to get into where you're doing now?
Yeah. So, so we pitched. So COVID happens. No events are happening. We're friends with Kevin O'Leary. We met him.
How'd you meet him?
I met him years ago. We paid him to speak on stages back in the day. So when we first met him, he was running for Prime Minister of Canada.
Really?
Yeah. So if you ever watch, he ran for Prime Minister of Canada. All the polls said that Kevin would win. He'd beat Trudeau. Yeah. Damn. And he have to go through your home province, and so he had to go through Quebec. He doesn't speak French, and they don't trust someone who doesn't speak really good French, so he doesn't make it past his province. But all the polls said he'd win. So we helped him. Literally, we worked with him way back in that time in Canada, promoted events for him in Canada, everything else. That's how long ago we met him.
So that's how you met all those people through events?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then COVID happens, and we're like, we have this tax business. We're like, okay, how do we get this tax business really charged up?
You started that business?
Yeah. So yeah, we started Tax Hive. So we're like, who do we know that can we can put their face on it and then get this multiple on our marketing? Well, Kevin O'Leary, right? He's our buddy. So I sent him a text, and he was here in Arizona. He's like, yeah, come on down. And, if you watch the show, he's like all about the numbers. Like literally his quote is, if you don't know your numbers, you're dead to me, right? So that stressed everyone out on the number thing because we needed to know the numbers. And so our CEO actually got up to pitch, and he had memorized every line chart and bar chart. And,
you talking about Chris?
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, he's one of the sharpest dudes I've ever met.
Great dude. So he stands up to launch into the pitch, and maybe a minute in or two, Kevin does this.
Yeah.
Which means, like, Simon Cowell, stop, right?
Yeah.
And I remember us, like, our hearts sank, and because we're like, well, I guess that deal's not going to happen. And we launched into, like, all the great things and the problems we want to solve, and he's like, I'm in. Kevin's like, I'm in. Let's do this. Because he has been presenting this stuff about taxes for so long. He's been teaching small business owners, hey, you're overlooking taxes. And it's almost like the red and blue pill. When I started getting into the tax stuff and I saw how these ultra wealthy handle tax, it's different than all the other small business people.
Everybody. I wasn't taught this stuff myself for the last couple of years. I started figuring this out.
That's right.
How much money I literally lost in taxes.
That's right. Yeah. Tax is so important. And if I ask any business owner, they don't think about it. Mm-hmm. So like, hey, what's your biggest expense? My biggest expenses. So it's like people, product costs, shipping, all that stuff. They never even think about tax, but it's sometimes your biggest expense that bites you. Oh, yeah. And overall, we pay all in. How much do you think in tax? All in.
An individual basis?
Yeah, just like how much do you think we pay? What percentage?
I mean, I'm probably, I don't know, over 30% is probably what I pay.
You think immediately income tax, right?
Yeah.
But like literally,
yeah. I mean,
there's like 27 taxes involved in this piece right here.
Yeah.
At least. There's probably 100 different taxes in this piece of product right here.
Tax on everything, yeah.
Yeah, so you start doing all the real math and it's 50%, right?
Damn.
There's only one that's negotiable, and that's income tax. All the others, you can't go up to the cash register and say, hey, this candy bar, can I get a better rate on the sales tax, right?
Well, that's all government level at that point, yeah.
So you have one thing you can control.
Your income tax.
Income tax. So when you're W-2, you can take up to 10 deductions. Uh-huh. When you become 1099 or a business owner, you can take up to 1,400. And no one sits you down and says, hey, by the way, Chris, you're a business owner. There's a big treasure chest here of deductions you can take. 1,400. You can start lining up your deductions to offset your income. And so because you go from W-2 to no one educates, then they end up taking 2 or 3 like they did when they were W-2. So business owners that do like millions of dollars of revenue,
yes,
they take 1 or 2 deductions.
Yeah.
I had a friend that came in like a year ago. He looked like he got hit by a truck. And I was like, what's up, man? And he's like, well, I got hit with the worst tax bill in my life. And I was like, what happened? And he's like, didn't make money, made a lot of money, wasn't expecting it, had 1 or 2 deductions, got hit with a $400,000 tax bill. And so he was liquidating property and trucks because he didn't have it available. And it was miserable. And now he's a tax type client, and we're helping him stack up. We look at his last year's taxes. What didn't he take? What could he have qualified for? And we start stacking up those deductions to offset the income, right? Wow. So we'll do that, and then we'll file the taxes, and we'll do bookkeeping.
Wild.
Yeah. I'll give you a quick example because you're a golfer.
Oh, no.
You like golf?
I'll golf socially.
What do you think when you hear Augusta? I mean, just the name. It's a town.
That's like literally like the cream of the crop.
It is.
Golf course.
It's hollowed ground.
Yeah.
Right? And so at one point I served a mission in that area in Augusta, Georgia, right? And at the time I loved golf. Really? And this isn't recommended for missionaries out serving, but one night I'm driving past Augusta and I'm like almost like, you know how like flies are attracted to the light. That was how I was with this course. And I snuck out on the course, which isn't recommended. I'm surprised I didn't get tased. But if you look at that course, it is the most insane, pristine course you've ever seen. We're talking about checkered, most beautiful velvety grass you've ever seen. I couldn't even see a divot. But if you stand in there in that
than Disneyland.
Oh yeah.
Cleaner than Disneyland.
It's hallowed ground. So I'm standing in there, but if you're standing in that moment as you look around, there's zero things shiny. There's no shiny buildings. There's no high-rise anything. What you see for miles around is neighborhoods. Right? These neighborhoods are all around Augusta National, right? So this tournament's 2 weeks a year, kind of like TPC here. This is an insane tournament. So 2 weeks a year in Augusta, Georgia is this tournament, right? The Masters. 250,000 people descend on Augusta, Georgia every year for this tournament. So if you live in Augusta, Georgia, smaller town, you want nothing to do with the Augusta National Tournament. You don't want to be there for the Masters.
Well, it's just like Indio, California. For
anywhere like that.
No one wants anything to do with it during that time.
You can't get into restaurants. What do they do?
Yeah.
they rent out their houses because there is no high-rise towers. There's no Hiltons. There's no big. So they rent them out, and they rent them out not for B&B rates. They rent them out for Marriott ballroom kind of rates, much higher. So for years they were making, call it $30,000 in 2 weeks, but they were having to pay $10,000 in tax. These Georgians, they go hire a lobbyist. The lobbyist goes in front of Congress and says, "Hey, these Georgians, they don't want to pay 2 weeks of tax. They want a 2-week carve out that they can rent out their houses and receive all that money and not pay tax." And they actually got a carve out. It's called Rule 280A. And that's called the Augusta Rule is the nickname. Right? So if you heard of the Augusta Rule, what it means is now that went federal. So every one of us business owners can now rent out our own house to our business for 14 days a year, tax-free. Crazy. So if you have a business, don't do your board meetings. Don't do your board meetings at your studio. Do them at your house once a month, and then another couple events. Pay yourself that rent for that day, and you get to take all those tax-free. Everyone can do that now.
You know, the thing that's wild is I didn't know quite to the extent of the tax write-offs you could do the last couple of years. And the biggest, I knew that it was something that you could do, but I never took the time to really look into it because I was raised in a household where the concept of doing a write-off was, oh, that's only for the rich. That's only for the evil.
Yeah, sure.
The evil,
loopholes and
loopholes. They're that's the reason why we don't have money for schools.
Yeah.
And, I got raised in that type of a household that they honestly raised us on that nonsense. And then I started.
A lot of us have.
Then I kind of woke up the last few years where I was like, wait a second, these loopholes, there's a reason why they were invented. I mean, if you're in business of some kind, that's literally the basis for what the economy depends on.
That's right.
It's on the business owner to innovate, create jobs, create the economy. Literally, the economy doesn't exist without it.
Yeah.
These are incentives to help incentivize a business owner to exist.
That's right.
To innovate more, to hire more. Why are we not taking advantage of this?
Yeah.
Like
there's two things. One is, again, we're paying 50% tax. You're paying plenty of fair share everywhere else. There's one area that you can control, right, which is income tax. And you're 100% right. There's a lot of fallacy around it. And there's also a lot of fear. Like you ever hear IRS, it's like, oh my gosh, IRS. Well, at the end of the day, the code is written for a business owner. Why? We want GDP in this great nation to get huge. And so, hey, how do we do that? Let's build a code that helps these business owners create a ton of revenue, because along the way, we're going to be getting all sorts of taxes on sales tax and product tax and all sorts of tax, right? So let's increase GDP. And so it actually is, if you consider it, hey, that could be a partnership. The code could be my partner, and I'm going to lean into it. I'm not going to fear it. And whenever you fear it, it's things like you just said, oh, well, that's a loop. That's only those guys can do it. Keep it far away. It's not here.
You always fear what you don't know, though, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Fear comes from what you don't know. So.
Yeah. Amen.
Why'd you start this business? You were just doing an events business. So where did that come about?
It's just basically, every good entrepreneur tries to solve problems, and we knew there was a problem. If you're a small business owner and you go to the big accounting floor and you walk into that front door, you're like, hey, can you do my accounting work? They'll be like, hey, just add a zero and then come back and see us, right? There's no one serving them. So then what happens is a business owner just goes and tries to do it on their own. And there's a great book called Who Not How. Dan Sullivan, if you haven't read it, it's highly recommended. It's essentially Who Not How. Business owners ask themselves the wrong questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do that? And you start stacking up all the things that you think you can figure out how to do. You become a bottleneck. You can't be everything to everyone. Instead, just find someone who's a good who that can help you, right? I've failed more times in my career because I try to be the who for things I know I'm not good at and can't do.
Know your role.
Yeah. You're not. No, they're not tax people. You're not a tax person. So just find a good who that can be a good partner for you that does that.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Was that the same partners that you had in the events business?
Same
Guys?
Yep.
And now you guys are just, because now you're also doing a law company too.
Yeah.
Was that same
That law is a separate company, a different company, but that law company helps service to the clients because a lot of people also don't have their entity structures done correctly, right?
Same partners to get that business going?
Yeah, no, that's a totally that's only owned by attorneys. So attorney law, but they're in the building so they can help service the clients, right? Yeah. But people don't know that too, and don't put things in your own name, right? There's countless stories of people literally will have apartment complexes and put everything in their own name. It's the definition of the worst idea.
No, I got caught up in some legal stuff where I had a bad attorney, honestly, what it came down to. I had a really, really bad attorney who gave me very bad advice. I was stupid, though, and young, and, I was early 20s at the time, and I didn't come from a business owner family. So I was kind of just figuring this stuff out on my own. And
you think all attorneys are created equal?
Yeah, and I'm looking at my attorney saying, hey, he's going to give me advice, right? I'm thinking like, oh, he's a business attorney, so he should be my advisor. And I'm going to him for advice on how to do stuff. And I didn't realize the dynamic at the time with attorneys where it's less of an advisor and more of they're just, I do what I'm told, right? Yeah. So he wasn't able to give me real advice. He just sort of did what he was told. And so we had a disconnect with where we were at. Yeah. And got caught up in some nasty legal stuff, and you had my name on everything. Yeah.
That's miserable stuff, man.
Get screwed.
Yeah, miserable. And same with accountants. A lot of people are frustrated with their accountant. They don't feel like they're getting the deductions. Yeah. They're actually not paying so you got to build a power team. Having a good attorney that actually give you good advice is part of that team. Having a tax filer is what they have. Someone who's like, they're the cash register person. You go give them your stuff and they just check you out at tax time. That's how people handle accounting. But the third one is they should have an actual tax planning person that's proactively trying to find you deductions. Right. And people don't ever think about that. They think that accountant who's just checking them out at the cash register should be doing all the deductions. They don't. The buzzer sounded, the game is over, and now they're just filing the tax. And they can't do much.
How does that go with having a good bookkeeper?
Bookkeeping is also another piece. So important. Yeah. You would not believe how bad books are.
Books are a mess. So the guys the office with us in Orin, that's what they do is the bookkeeping side.
So important.
And I see man, they're saving so many companies mess.
Yeah, we had a client that was he would enter in the revenue that he was putting in from this other side, so counting that as revenue, double counting it as revenue over here. He was double counting literally every dollar into their business, and so he had a tax liability of $100,000. But because he doubled his revenue in his books, his liability was $300,000. His liability was $300,000 because he had doubled all of his revenue.
Dang, that's gonna
just on his books.
That's gonna kill him.
It's again, who not how. Like, we're not book people.
Yeah.
Fractional bookkeeping is a great way to go. So you don't have to spend $1,000, $2,000 a week to hire someone. Just have fractional people. Everything's virtual now. They can, fractional do it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
You were telling me a little bit earlier when we were chatting, you got into, you do stuff with BYU on the NAL side. Yeah. How did that come about? How'd you get into that? Why'd you get into that?
I'm just a loyal blue, man. And I believe I'm a networking machine. I network constantly. So 100%. I'm involved in all sorts of events. I want to be a part of events. I have my own events I do. I bring in people. I believe the greatest way to scale is scale relationships, right? So I have friends that are really into that. They're like, hey, we need a space. We want to work with you on it. And that's why I did that. But I do multiple things that way.
100%.
Yeah.
Did you end your events business and start something new, or
yeah?
Or is that sitting up today?
Yeah, totally different now. Now I'm just doing networking stuff.
Just networking, not for the actively in the business.
Yep.
How did you make money in the events business? What was the?
It was selling tickets, selling training, education, that kind of stuff.
So you were on that side of the coin.
Now I'm with this guy right here. We're doing an event coming up in 2 weeks. It's completely sold out. and we're going to the Utah Hockey Club, and we have the Gallagher Suite that he paid for, and he sponsored it. And it's the extra. It's my X Room event, and so we'll have 125 people there. And all it is he's going to get up and speak for a couple minutes. I'm going to get up and speak for a couple minutes, and then it's just pure networking, watching hockey together.
I love that.
And then what happens is you get a couple of really good business people together. They end up doing business together, and they multiply their company. That's where the X comes from.
Dude, so I don't think we haven't been in touch the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. You taught me so much about the event space. I've literally been replicating your model.
It's awesome.
Over the last couple of years.
Great, dude. I tell everyone, it's like, instead of getting a seat at the table, create your own table.
100%. I've always kind of ran the model, like mindset myself of identify. First off, you have to be truly aware of who you are, mm-hmm. what your role is, and what is your purpose and what is your passion, mm-hmm. and then from there, emulate. Don't replicate. You don't have to recreate a wheel.
Yeah.
You can identify who's already doing something well in that space, mm-hmm. and just learn.
Sure.
Learn it, and then start from there. And then once you get good at it, doing that, then you can start to create a little bit of your own flair from there.
Yeah.
All last year, I was doing networking lunches.
It's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah, you were at my some of my networking lunches.
And I'm literally getting 15, 25, 30, depending on the group size.
Right. Yeah.
And we actually even did a campaign one for Scott Smith, who's running for mayor here in Mesa. We did it. He had us do a campaign event for him. Yeah. We've just been running events. I ran, I don't know, maybe 20 events last year.
It's awesome.
And getting people of various different sizes and depending on what I was told we needed to get.
I love it. That's beautiful. Nice work.
Dude, 100%.
So everyone says don't be transactional, right? But I totally disagree with that. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do transactions? Transactions are a beautiful, glorious thing. If I were to say, hey, use your top 10 most valuable people in your phone, you probably did a transaction with them there may be a customer, or you did a partnership with them, you did something. I'm a huge believer in it. And because everyone says don't be transactional, I know what that means. Like, hey, don't force yourself. I agree. There's certain things, but transactions are amazing. Like, go do stuff. And in fact, you went to a lunch at my office, right?
Uh-huh.
And you sat next to Bridger Pennington. Remember this?
I did. You set me up with Bridger.
Yeah. So, and then you had a software at the time that was an event software. Uh-huh. And we went around and did intros. And by the end of that lunch, you had done a deal with them to get on their stages and do all their events.
Yeah, we did 2 or 3 events. It actually made the business money, which the business has been losing money.
Yeah. And that all happened because, one, you showed up, and two, you were able to do a transaction and say, hey, this is like a perfect fit. He's doing events. He needs a good software, something to organize and help him with the structure. Is like a perfect fit. So those are the kind of things I love to do. What you just did in that event.
100%. No, likewise. No, 100%. I would just change the lingo to calling it connections rather than transactions. I'm building connections with
even
people.
Better.
Like building connections. But to the same point though, is you have to do stuff with people. Mm-hmm. It's not I just sort of know. No, you do a deal with them.
There's this fakeness that happens because everyone says don't be transactional. Don't. So then they know there's a perfect fit in their business and what they're doing, but then they're afraid to say it because they don't want to be that person. Mm-hmm. But just connections, powerful. Yep. And I've been at like 4 events this week, right? And the riches are made in the follow through, and that's what everyone misses. Very few people will actually follow through after an event. Mm-hmm. Very few. It's like I've actually never seen, maybe a handful of times in all the events I've seen actually someone with real intention coming into the room actually come out with some really good follow-ups from that meeting. Just a small handful. For the most part, people just go in there and they're hoping something happens. But you got to go with real intention, and then you got to go in there and set the appointment in the room. That's what I do every time. I literally was at an event 2 nights ago with Sam Taggart doing a book launch.
The door-to-door guy.
Door-to-door guy. Yeah. Yep. It was like 30 people in the room is all.
Yeah.
This one guy in the room, he's like, oh, you have a text business.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really looking. I need help. Uh-huh. And I was like, ding. It was like, okay, let's step over. I talked to him for a minute. I was like, hey, how's your schedule? Oh, I'm out of town next week. how's Tuesday for lunch at my office? So next week I have an appointment with them. And if I were to just say, okay, cool, yeah, I'll hit you up after this event, then it's really awkward. Oh, I met you at the thing. And remember, how, you know what I mean? So I always leave there with 3 or 4 appointments, and I've done incredible revenue from that, just that one thing. Just follow. Riches are made in the follow through.
Why do you think people don't do follow through?
I think it's an awkward thing. It's hard for them to say, hey, here's exactly my line. I say, okay, hey, would you mind if we just set the appointment now? Because I know if I leave these 2 doors, I'm going to get lost in the shuffle. But I feel like based on what you're doing and what I'm doing, there's a great fit.
Yeah.
I've had 100% close rate on that question. 100%. No one says no because they know it's a fit. So then I leave there and I have the appointment. Now there's no awkwardness, but people always, we're in the mindset of doing it after. Do it later. I'll do it later and I'll chase them down later. Well, that never happens. If you don't do it there, what's the likelihood you're going to do it in 2 days or a day or a week? Right?
It goes down.
Dramatically.
I remember getting advice years ago where it was when you get a thought, act on it within about 3-4 seconds.
Yeah.
Because after that,
do it.
The likelihood of you doing that thought goes down.
Yeah.
Because you've already created a justification in your brain to not do it.
Yeah. It's a great book called Surrender Experiment.
Oh, Singer?
Yeah. My all-time favorites. It's God, the universe telling you something in that moment to do. And we don't listen. I mean, I don't know how many times I've probably been prompted, don't listen.
Yeah.
Right?
I just had someone the other day who was asking me, a buddy of mine, he was asking me, he was like, he was trying to make sense of it because he was all like, they always say, full surrender, but at the same time, he's all like, I've always just kind of noticed that, people just sort of attract business. And he was asking me like, how make sense of it, of why that is the case. And I was telling him, I was like, well, if you align the heart and the mind and all 7 energy signals, and you do full surrender and full perfect alignment, and say, hey, God, I am 100% yours, and whatever your will is, you are becoming a love magnet.
Yeah, it's true.
And what happens when you become a love magnet? Attraction to everything.
It's true.
So that's how that works. And he was like, okay, damn. Okay.
That's how I feel like going into rooms. It's also how you show up into any live event, any room. Most people that I've seen show up like this. Because it's a safety blanket.
Oh, it's me.
And they put their head down and they go sit in the corner. They go stand in the corner. And they're like, I wonder why my business isn't growing based on word of mouth. It's like, no, dude, it's a portal.
Yeah.
You go with real intention into that room. What do I want to accomplish? Set your intention. You walk through that. You're going through a portal, and you're your most strongest, best self in that room. And you come away with 4 or 5. When the other person's standing in the corner on his phone and getting nothing.
100%. That was me for several years, and I wasn't being my most best authentic self.
Yeah, I
had childhood wounds that I was kind of wrestling through, and had a lot of shame and guilt. It's been, at the time with in my family life, home life, I was going home every night and kind of still getting berated. Yeah. So I'm not showing up to the events my best self, and I'm burying in my phone.
We've been there, done that, and it's actually human nature. Some introverts, you tell them, hey, go jump in a room of strangers. It's like, I'd rather die than do that, right? So, but a quick trick I've learned is I go straight into the center of the room, or the front center. That's where the promoter's standing. And I build a relationship with that promoter. And I stand in there with power. I don't stand on one foot. And if you ever wondered about where your confidence is, your physiology reflects your inner, right? So if you're standing there and you're putting a lot of weight on one foot and you're kind of like trying to sneak away, you kind of slump away. No, you need to stand in your power with both feet fully planted. And I stand right in the center of the room. And I go right up to the promoter and I go build a relationship with the promoter. I've had multiple people come up to me and say, hey, are you putting on this event? Oh, yeah. How do you know? It's like, why don't people do that? They go in the corner in their phone.
Nope. I love this. No, wow. So my one of my first businesses I ever built was a brand management company, and at its height, I had actually got it up to about, I was working with 40 to 50 celebrities. This was actually the business that I started to make real money on. My first business, I didn't make much of anything on. This business I started to make some money on. It died during COVID. And then I started to try to like use my clout from that and any money I'd made to go do other stuff, and then that's what flattened me out, was that. But the brand management company, how did I get to the athletes I did? I literally was just bold. I was just directly DMing athletes. I was just emailing people. I literally sat down. I went from DM to sitting across the table from Terrell Owens and lunch in Century City within a week. Just being bold.
Stand up and be confident.
And I would go talk to other people and be like, how'd you get in front of T.O.? And I'd be like, I DM'd him. And they're like, why would you do that? I'm like, why not? Why not DM T.O.?
Yeah, you got to play all out. That quote is like, man, live a life of quiet desperation. Don't be quiet desperation. Go live all out.
Go all out.
Play all out. Play hard. Don't be like pansing things, and just play as hard as you possibly can in life, right?
100%.
Yeah.
So where does Shawn Finnegan go from here?
For me personally, I have these 3 little girls. I have 2 married daughters and one. And for me, my greatest time is with my 18-year-old daughter. The best thing ever.
What school is she going to?
She's at Lone Peak. So my perspective changes. I have limited time with her, and she's like literally my best friend. The other day I was walking. It was like a few weeks ago. I was walking over at the park, and we were walking our dog, and there was this loud, big crash bang on the street right by the park. Look over, and this lady just smashed another car. This lady gets out. She's not hurt, but she sits down on the sidewalk, and she's on the phone talking to someone, and she's bawling her eyes out, and she's traumatized. And this all happened right here. And so I was walking my dog with my daughter, my little 18-year-old, and I was like, I moved around the lady and just walking down the sidewalk, and I look over to my daughter, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was so crazy, right, sweetie? And my daughter's not there. And I was like, where is she? I look back, and she's sitting on the sidewalk, and she has her arm around this lady, and it's like, are you okay? Right? And she's like consoling this lady. And it's like, just seeing the love that little girl had for this lady was like just so powerful, right? And it's like, that's the stuff that I love right now more than anything, right? Is those moments. And so that's what I cherish more than anything.
Dude, I love that. You raised your girl well.
Yeah, I hope so. She's like just this amazing. I mean, I've learned a lot about nurturing and loving people from your children, right? It's amazing.
No, I definitely vibe with that. My little 2-year-old has taught me more about consciousness than anyone else could have.
Yeah, it's true.
He taught me more about love and that more than anyone else could have.
Yeah.
He'll just seeing the joy he has when he sees my mom come. He calls her Mima. Yeah. And he sees her come in the door, and he's like, Mima! And he just like lunges, or he sees me. Every single time I pick him up from daycare, it's like just pure joy, darts.
Life becomes great with those kids, man.
I know. Something about it.
Yeah.
Something about it there.
It increases your capacity for love. Let's say your box is this big, you have a kid, that box becomes bigger, right? That's what it's all about.
100%. My 2-year-old, and then my 3-year-old puppy too. He's been he's a kid. He's my kid to me too. Yeah. Like, he's taught me a lot about parenthood. Yeah. The thing I always kind of finish things off with on the show is something that you highlight that matters to you. Person, place, thing, idea. Yeah.
So something I've done the last 90 days that I never thought I'd do is I have mentored in prison, Utah State Prison, and
where is it now? They moved it from Draper.
It is. It's over by the airport, way out west from there, and it's state of the art. I do it part of a group that helps. We don't call them inmates at all. They're called future entrepreneurs in training. That's what it is. We call them. These are people who all signed up for an entrepreneur class in prison. And so it says a lot about them. And I do it with DeFi, which is a non-for-profit. It goes in there and helps train entrepreneurs, future entrepreneurs, right? And these are prisoners. So picture going in through like multiple doors, like buzzing through multiple, literally top security, high security, prison, like you're going through the crate, and then you're smack in the middle of the chapel there, and you're teaching. So the first class I did had 70 or 60 men in it, and then the next one I did was with the women's prison, and there was another 60. So these people sign up for it, and it is a one of the things we did is we had them. They had a poster board they handed out, and then you did a lifeline. And my lifeline was like, oh, this and graduated here and all this. Their lifeline was started drinking here, did drugs here, got abused here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as I'm sitting there with them, like this last group, there was three. I had three women with me. All three were murderers. And then some of the men, like one guy, he was sitting with his family in his home. His competitor threw a brick through his house, tried to hit his daughter. He chased him down, almost killed him. Was in there for that. And as they're going through their life, you just have so much profound love for them, and you kind of see how God sees them. And I came through the epiphany is like, hey, they feel like they're lower than dirt. It's time to build them up more on the business side. And it's like, hey, tell me about the time you worked together in the oil fields. Tell me what your daily life was like in building them up that they can actually contribute to society. So that's something I've been doing. I'm going to do it again. I missed this one, but the next one's coming up in another 60 days. But that's something I'm going to dedicate my time to.
Do you have other friends who join you on this?
Yeah, you can come. You should join.
I want to come.
If you come, if you want, I'll make an intro. You should come up and experience it with us.
This sounds like something that's right up my alley.
Yeah,
because a lot of times people will look at people who have gone through various acts of life, right? Whether it be a criminal case, go to prison, divorce, for eviction. There's various little acts of life that may happen along the way for various people that are kind of like black marks on the person. Yeah, and in society, we'll just judge them. Yeah, that's right. And it's like, well, your judgment disappears when you start spending time with people like this. Yeah, why are we judging people? You got to stop judging people. Like let's for myself, I'm like, I want to say I'm a Christ follower. Well, what does a Christ follower do? Yeah, he's not judging people. I felt like Christ, if he would come right now, he'd be in the fringe. He'd be with those people. Christ himself was hung on a cross for a crime. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So what are we doing here? I'll make an intro, and you should come to the next one. I love it. Yeah, you'd be great. Appreciate it, Shawn. Well, thank you again for coming on. This was amazing. This was the first of many, hopefully. Yes, let's do it again. Let's get you down to AZ. Yeah, let's anytime, especially all winter long.